The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the speakers or authors and do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions held by the producers of this broadcast. The material herein is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome to another episode of Scariest Paranormal. Tonight, we have two for the price of one, two guests, and it is Lynda and Viktor Salazar. And they are here to discuss their scariest paranormal experiences. And they've had quite a few. They are from San Antonio, Texas, and they're now living, I think, in Virginia. And so they've been around the United States. They've been to all kinds of different haunted locations. They've been on television shows. And they have quite a tale to tell. So welcome, Lynda and Viktor.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. God, I'm so excited, y'all.
Yay. Well, thank you for having us. It's definitely a pleasure.
Same here. You know, we're always happy to be on your show.
No, and I'm always happy to be on yours, too. So it works out well. Lynda and Viktor also have the Seance Room, very popular podcast, and they have made me an honorary host as well, which is very exciting, and I'm very honored to be a part of that as well. So we do a lot of stuff together, but tonight we're going to talk about some of their scary experiences, because I know you guys had quite a few. In fact, the first time I met you guys, y'all were having some scary stuff going on. Tell everybody a little bit about you. For those of the people out there that do not know who you are, tell them a little bit about who you are and what you've done, and let us know, refresh our memories.
Sure. As I like to say, before we get into the revelation of what was, we must travel back to the beginning.
Yes.
To the genesis.
Right.
Of how we became Lynda.
Well, I know that we both, growing up in South Texas, folklores and ghost tales, that ghost stories and believing in life after life. It's not anything a norm for us. It's something that we grew up just knowing about. It wasn't a hidden secret. It wasn't anything that was considered taboo, but it wasn't something that we talked at the table all the time as well. But this is the with Viktor and I, this is how we both grew up, and when we both met, it just turned out that Viktor and I had so much in common, and with the family history and background. So how we got into the whole experiences and into the paranormal world, that was just Viktor.
Well,
and y'all have been together a long time. I mean, y'all have been together since y'all are like teenagers, right? Seriously. I mean, people have to understand that they have a long history of together. They didn't just meet, like 2 years ago. They've been together for decades. So you guys have, practically grew up together.
Yeah, 20 plus years. I mean, when we met each other, we were very early, like we just hit our 20s. So we were early 20s, like just stepping into the 20s. So you can say that we were just right there, because 21 and 20. So
long time.
Yeah. And we've been together ever since. 20 plus years, like you said.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting going back and kind of refreshing everyone's mind. A lot of those that may be listening will remember us from the shows, but also a lot don't, or some do actually, know us when we were heavily involved in Christian ministry and back in South Texas. So a lot of people know us from that time, and just things evolved throughout the years as it does. And that's when, the show came out, and that's where people most recognize us from. And also, I write books, and so it's pretty interesting. And I think people kind of pick and choose, certain areas from where they remember or have seen us before, and they kind of mesh it all together. And but no, we've done a lot. We've been involved in a lot of things concerning ministry, whether it be in Christianity, Lynda's background, Catholicism, as well as, hey, I did music for a while, so people may remember me from that time, that little season there. So yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting ride, to say the least. But that's when the paranormal, as Lynda stated, was introduced to us very early, very early on in life. And you were just born knowing and knowing your surroundings and knowing about the, life after life, as Lynda stated. And for me, it started when I began seeing wispy looking shapes, and receiving whispered impressions upon my soul, connecting with the location or homes we lived in or others' homes, oftentimes images of deceased relatives and things of that nature. And we were not afraid to share some of those experiences with our family members, because it, as Lynda stated, was the norm for us growing up.
Yeah, and for me, it started out with an 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 I like to say a tia of mine, an aunt. If people want to know what tia means, an aunt of mine. She her and her husband used to be like the main babysitter if our parents and everybody went out, family socially. All the kids would stay with a particular aunt and uncle, and they we loved all the cousins loved staying with our aunt, and she loved to tell ghost stories and stories of folklore, and without us even knowing at a very young age, they would take us ghost hunting by doing a drive. We would all be in this little El Camino, those pickup trucks, and she would open the window slides because those trucks had those little window slides, and she would tell us a story as my uncle was driving, and he would drive real slow uh around our area, the country roads where apparently so and so was seen, or so and so had happenings. And so from there, that took off for me.
And you have to remember too, Lynda had a really cool place to do those early ghost investigations, because it's out in the country. There's fields, there's trees, there's rivers, there's lakes.
Yes.
So to be cruising those long winding roads, in back of the El Camino, listening to the old folklore stories. I mean, come on,
It's so great.
It is
really so great. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, old San Patricio County. I mean, even San Patricio County itself, in down in South Texas, has a lot of ghost stories and stories that are considered folklore, and that's something that I have to say, that some of them are tied into our family history. So it just turns out that some of our great aunts or someone within the family line married into the family, apparently there, if you read some of the ghost stories in South Texas area, you will find out that some of them are related to to, to my family. So yeah, what can I say? It was just right there. It was just something that Victor and I would always talk about and be like, wow, I can't believe this. And uh, paranormal investigation was not even like a thing of us looking into it. It was just there, we were always curious about it, always wanting to know, is there life after death? I mean, I have seen apparitions. I have seen the unexplained as a child. So there were things that kept me going and wondering.
And all of this led up to you guys winding up being on a television show. You guys were actually regulars on one of the television shows. Is that correct?
We made some, I would say cameos, I guess if you would call it that, but we did show up on one of them quite a few times. And on the other one, it was as guest. And it was pretty interesting, though, I mean, when that came about, because I believe it was early 2000 or so. And that's when the whole paranormal craze shouted, through programs, movies, etc. And we weren't very interested in them at that time, as you would imagine, because of our upbringing. That was what we always knew, the kukui, the black dog, La Llorona, and things of that nature. And except for, I guess, there was probably 3 programs at the time that were very popular. And there was one that we would watch that aired. And I believe because it had been the norm again growing up, it just wasn't that interesting for us. I mean, it was just something like, oh, a show. Wow, this is interesting. However, in 2009 was when I suppose you can say that we were officially introduced to the paranormal by a spectator standards.
Yeah.
And, there was a radio contest for an overnight investigation at an alleged haunted location. And for those of you who don't know, Lynn and I met on October 31st, ironically, Halloween night. And, we were invited by one of the winners, and it was an anniversary gift and surprise from Lynda, knowing how much I loved history. And it just happened to be noted that it was rumored to be haunted. And long story short, we stayed the full night. We went home, and upon analyzing my voice recorder, low guttural voice was caught, amongst others. And that is pretty much how it began. It was shocking because I'd always heard impressions, but never captured a voice on audio before. And the initial feeling was I had made a connection with someone or something. It was really crazy. It was intense. Chills ran down my spine, causing tears to form and run down my face. I could never quite figure out why. I wasn't sad, afraid, or really had any reaction that's typically connected to the flow of tears. I was just really surprised, taken aback, and it was quite the experience. That's when soon after we were invited back to participate in future investigations due to the evidence and experiences we'd had when we gathered. And that's when it started, it captured the interest of those filming these television programs, as well as a lot of popular paranormal teams that were sprouting at the time. They were very fresh and very young and early, and they started flocking to the location. And it was a really interesting thing. But yes, we did show up on one of the shows, the most popular one at the time. And it's still popular, but their credit. It's still popular. It is what it is. And it plays and plays, and I'm sure we'll discuss more in detail as we go further on in this conversation.
Yeah, it was kind of almost very serendipitous for you guys to get involved in the things that you got involved with. It's almost like it beckoned you to step into it.
Yes, and that's, I love how you put it that way, because that's how it felt. Think about it. You go to this investigation to do as a overnight for a contest. Who can be there and be there all night and survive? That was the whole. That was the catch. The catch. That was the tagline. And we made it through the whole night, and even captured some interesting photos and more audio than anything. And then next thing you know, it was like a roller coaster ride. Like, we didn't have time to think about do we want to do this? Are we these TV shows coming on, because everybody was just coming up and going. We ran into a lot of folks that are now very well known on TV and very well known on shows. And the thing is, it was one of those things that it was like everybody was coming to this area to do uh investigations, and next thing you know, there was always I guess you can say like mini conventions, paranormal nights for folks to come, and we were just asked, can you help me out here, can you help us out here, so and so's coming, we need your help. And we would end up being there, so we were kind of just thrown in there. And in a way, we learned a lot from a lot of folks, but we also learned also a lot about ourselves in
But
the paranormal world.
yeah, it definitely was a snowball effect. Definitely, because, and again, you have to kind of go back. You have to go back to the genesis of who Victor and Linda were at that time. And I've pondered on these things for a long, long, long time. And this actually is probably one of the first shows that I've delved deep, and am actually sharing, some detailed information that I've pretty much kept, to myself. I mean, you got to keep some things to yourself.
Stay tuned for more Scariest Paranormal Radio.
Submitted for your approval. New Orleans. Seductive, magical, mysterious, and haunted. There is no place on this earth with as much ghost and vampire activity as New Orleans. Imagine, if you will, a tour. A tour that takes you to sites in the French Quarter of actual documented hauntings. The Haunted History Tour is just that tour. Every day, every night, all year round. This tour has been featured on ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN. And it's available to you. Are there ghosts and vampires in the French Quarter? Find out by taking the tour that everyone is talking about. The Haunted History Tour. For more information, call Haunted History Tours at 861-2727. That's 861-2727. This is not a Halloween spookhouse. This is real.
You're listening to Scariest Paranormal Radio.
I believe in free will and design as well as purpose. I have been, for myself and for Lynn, we have been soul searching. I have been training with various spiritual organizations under distinguished religious leaders of the community in South Texas, securing my position into an early life journey of my belief system built on Christianity. And some years later, it led to the ordination of deacon by the non-denominational branch. So there was, you have that, that's the start of it, And through that, there was still an unsettled conflict within myself to find this creator of life I worshipped and loved and adored and, put myself out there for. But stuck within the four walls of a building was no longer benefiting my spiritual growth. So I had to grasp the face of this creator of all things, and believing wasn't enough. So I ventured out from my comfort zone in search of it. And at that point in time, I was also inquiring of a suppressed gift that the church recognizes as spiritual discernment. So when you kind of rewind and you kind of go back and you kind of gain a better understanding that led up to this point, being at this haunted location and and everything that happened, that whole snowball effect that Lynn was describing, because it was so unique, but yet it wasn't, because we had already experienced spiritual things, I'll say, in the church house that weren't much different other than terminology and doctrine and all this other stuff. And to add to that, I'd learned that what was part of my lineage was curanderismo, a birthright gift termed el don de Dios, or el don, gift of God. So I'd like to say it was a divine intervention of some sort to kind of align these two, for me to find the path, to find that alignment, that spiritual alignment. And as you can imagine, you have two people coming from ministry, and you're going into a haunted location. I mean, that's frowned upon, you know. And
I don't know much about your path, your earlier spiritual path, but I grew up Catholic, and it was kind of frowned upon.
Yeah, see, so taking this different path, although complex, we took it. And I believe that, you know, God used my situation to his advantage and loosened the leash for me to make some choices. You know, and well, I chose to see, to hear, to feel, confront this general, you know, I felt was the root cause of my ambivalence. As I like to say, an accidental soldier in a private war, but not much by accident, really. I made the decision in hopes that in doing so, I'd find myself too within the chaos that we were to eventually meet at that time, which led to the show that aired. Diluted, of course, but nonetheless, it was out in the open for everyone to see and everyone to hear. So it was really quite interesting.
And you know, we both in our different journeys before we met up, and then going into this other journey, you know, we had scary scary things that had happened to us that that even when we were together, when we were freshly married, you know, newlyweds, there was definitely a lot of strange things going on, and things that scared the heck out of us. But you know, we had great supporters. You know, we had what's our spiritual father, who was really awesome, that would talk to us and say, you know, you can't fear this. And then also growing up Catholic, you know, I had some good, believe it or not, folks always are down on the Catholics, but no offense to anybody, but you know, I had some great, cool, old school priests and folks in the Catholic Church that I could actually really be Lynda, and I could talk, you know, and ask questions without being reprimanded or being, but you know, of course, that was my one-on-one time when I could talk and have discussions. And I was always a curious child, you know, that was me. I always asked questions, and the questions weren't just your norm, you know, about the Holy Eucharist. Mine was about the martyrs, the bone up in the, when, you know, underneath the altar, and is exorcism real? You know, is that really real? You know, those were questions I was asking. You know, I wasn't afraid to ask those questions. So, and the great thing is, going to a Catholic school, you know, because I did go to a Catholic school for a time being, and then catechism, you know, thank goodness that I had, thank God that I had priests that understood me, and they took the time to talk to me and tell me about it. And they didn't hide it. They didn't keep it as, oh, well, don't, you know, it was pretty much like, I'm going to be real with you, but I just don't think you should look too much into this, you know, because it can be a dangerous thing to step into, but it is there. So don't deny it, but know that just as there's good, there's evil. So
that's a very good point. And I like what you said, Lynda, while during our time of ministry, you know, it wasn't the whole radical, crazy kind of things that people do. We witnessed a lot of similar activity in the church houses, in the people that were in the church that were having these difficulties with activity in their homes, and they didn't understand what was going on. And we could relate to them because we also were having similar activities in our home. In our first apartment, Lynda had a crystal frame that literally lifted and was thrown at her and paused and then crashed to the floor. And that was one of the experiences that we actually called our spiritual father. And he came over, and it was very, you know, he didn't look at us as if we were crazy. He was there with a leaning heart, listening in. also he was there as our covering to share with us, okay, it's almost as if we had crossed over into the deeper side of what goes on with the world around us, or what's happening other than what we were being taught, and that's where that whole spiritual discernment started kicking in. It was very strong in the church house, in the ministry, and it wasn't much different than what a medium, a psychic, or a person that has these abilities. It wasn't much different, and but I don't think there was that moment of actuality that I knew it was real. I knew that the stuff that was happening was real, and we just never could pinpoint it as to why. And that's where the kind of deters you into, what, I need to understand. I need to have some form of understanding. And but again, we witnessed so much through ministry, and also through the season traversing through the paranormal gateway. And we hosted these big functions, these paracons, these all these people, and later we became tour guides, and we watched others. And again, you're talking about coming from the church house into this situation, so our guards are up. We're like, oh, okay, that's not good, or oh, that's bad, just that sort of thing, And we're watching others create these strange situations with the use of equipment to validate paranormal activity, mingled with mediums, researchers, witches, and people from all walks of life, pretty much rehearsing what paranormal programs were doing at the time, but adding their technique and doing extraordinary things with them. And but of course, we refrained from participating and stood by and watched. And we just began partaking. As Lynda said, we didn't have, it was so strange. I can't even recall the time that we actually participated in an investigation, or a proper investigation, if there is one. As proper, like if there's rules to it, and which there is, but you get what I'm saying.
Right. Well, it sounds like there was a lot of opening of portals with people really not realizing what was going on, except for you two.
Absolutely. And we observed quietly. We were the wallflowers during these investigations, because we were cautious, we were careful, because we had some information already as to what could take place, the opening of portals, doing things that were probably not necessarily good to do with provocation. And then we just began to partake in these experimental investigative situations, and all convictions were tossed out the window. It was like, oh, wait a minute, we're getting results where we're actually, we've lent our vessels to these experiments, and results are coming in, and these people are gathering all this data, and they are, by the time you know it, there we are sitting in a circle in this huge ballroom in front of the fireplace. And it became so common for those that would gather, the ones that were rooted there, to just walk in and take their position naturally, without, oh, I'm going to sit here, or I'm going to sit there. I was always in the one to sit in the same spot, which was pretty much the antenna of the place, without knowing this, and others surrounded, and stuff would happen. We would see things. We witnessed movement. We witnessed disembodied voices. We witnessed shadows. We witnessed so many things, and for some reason at that time we were desensitized to what was taking place around us, in which could become a dangerous situation, because we were becoming very comfortable, and allowing these things to come forward, and just, getting excited and thrilled, and we had that wow, factor. But watching how all these people, too, on the flip side of that coin, watching them succumb to specific experiences was scary. I mean, we witnessed a man bleed from his nose and utter words that seemed to be from someone else, another group came. I remember another group became ill simultaneously, running outside, literally spewing vomit on the property grounds.
Wow.
People's personalities would change, and their fears were amplified.
The energy
with claims of hostile manifestations of the alleged spirits there. And so that's when things started, it shifted, from the wow, ooh, and the ahs to, okay, wait a minute, this is becoming a little creepy and scary.
Yep. Now, did at any point you feel like this was something demonic, or was this just evil spirits, or what do you think was really, from a spiritual level, what do you think was really at work here?
From a spiritual point of view, if I go back to the Victor of the Deacon days, obviously it would be, okay, well, this is demonic in nature. There is something at play here, but then when I step out of that, I feel that what was taking place there, I mean, the grounds were saturated with very horrific history. I mean, it was a battleground. It so many men died. It was indigenous to the Comanche Indians, and they had things done there to them. Everyone that was on those properties suffered some kind of misfortune. There were suicides. There was a lot of bloodshed, and it seems that history
would repeat itself,
and to a certain degree. So it's very interesting. I don't know if it was because so many people walked in and out and did many different things and opened up many different doorways that these disincarnate souls, or things that are bad, or were able to just come in and out as they please. Just what I picture is a huge hornet's nest, with all the little holes, and them coming in and out, in and out, in and out, because it did become a switchboard to many things. I mean, people were gathering to speak to their loved ones, and I'm not sure why they felt that they could do it there. I guess because they just, that void, they wanted to fill that void.
And I think we were always, I know Victor and I would have conversations on that. We would always question, why are they coming all the way over here to speak to a loved one? And that would always be my question. And I would always say, what about familiar spirits? Because spirits can take on a familiar, if you give them enough info, they can take on and familiarize themselves to be.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
What you're wanting.
Yes.
And so
absolutely.
I would always question that, because I would be like, well, if your loved one had no connection to this place, why would your loved one come through this portal? And that's where I started questioning a lot on the knowledge of my spirituality that I knew. I knew that, hey, there's something that shouldn't be played with, because doors are being opened and you're calling loved ones that I don't think you need to be calling them in this area. Even if this area is switchboard, I do not think you need to be calling them, because this is an area that they would not even know of or be associated to. So, those were things that Victor and I were we would always have deep conversations about
many nights
about that.
And, I wanted to answer Khalila's question, which said, what did she think it was? It just came to mind when I talked about, going back to ministry, when we were in the ministry and stuff. We were taught that there were certain territories, in specific places that have an assigned, if you want to call it spirit, demon, whatever you want to call it, that there are territorial in nature, and they are assigned to these locations that it's almost as if you're walking and playing in the devil's backyard, figuratively. And because so much bad happened, and it's like the cemeteries. You respect sacred ground. You don't go treading upon these grave sites and provoking and calling up things, for
Right.
entertainment, or you want to capture something. I felt the same way for this particular area, and there was so much provoking from many teams at their own. It was brought to their attention that to be careful in what they did, and if they wanted to investigate, they went through the whole process of the do's and don'ts, and a lot of them though did not follow instruction and or rule, and they wanted the experience, so they didn't care how or what they did to gain this experience that they were looking for. And we witnessed a lot of provocation, and again, that's opening doors that
Right.
that were never closed,
Mm-hmm.
that were never shut. And then it's just left there. All that negative energy just kind of permeated, through the walls and through the air, and things would happen, and not good things. Some terrible things would happen, and it just by that time and point, again, I always felt there was a force, a presence that was over that certain particular area, whether it be something sacred from the indigenous people that lived there, or whether it be something spiritual that, it belongs to a certain elemental, as those like to believe, because there was surrounded uh, by a whole wooded area. Just there's so many factors, but I never could pinpoint as to the why.
Stay tuned for more Scariest Paranormal Radio.
Follow me, Kalila Smith, into the mysterious world of spirits. Searching for Spirits, the ultimate guide for ghost hunters, is a concise how-to manual for anyone who enjoys a good ghost hunt. Learn the history of spiritualism, learn what a ghost is and what is not, learn the truth about poltergeist. We'll also delve into the realm of spiritual beings that never were human, the world of demons, real vampires, and we'll look at some real case studies. This is a must-have for everyone interested in ghost hunting, from the novice to the expert. Completely updated in its second edition, this is one of the first guides for ghost hunting based on actual first-hand experiences. Available on Amazon.com. Searching for Spirits, the ultimate guide for ghost hunters, by Kalila Smith.
You're listening to Scariest Paranormal Radio.
The why was this happening other than what we experienced?
Well, the indigenous end of it, that's pretty interesting because, if you look at some of the most haunted locations, if you dig deep enough into the history, you're going to find a connection with some sort of Native American, whether it be a ceremonial mound, whether it be
Mm-hmm.
a sacred mound, whether it be a burial mound. There's always some connection to a different civilization, the native civilization. And oftentimes it is a burial ground, and oftentimes those burial grounds were tampered with, and they were desecrated, and they were disrespected. And I find that quite often in researching this, that some of your what I consider not just haunted but cursed places.
Yes.
A classic example like the Bell Witch. The
Mm-hmm.
Bell Witch, which became somewhat of a generational curse. The same with the Myrtles Plantation, where it, became somewhat of a generational thing.
Mm-hmm.
It went from one generation to the next, and then one owner of the house to the next.
Yes.
And it continued like that. And in both situations, it started off with someone coming along and tampering with Native American burial grounds, and severely tampering with them. and removing bodies from graves and that sort of thing. And I do believe in these many traditions, and not just Native American, but you know, many traditions. There are guardian spirits who guard these burial grounds, and if you anger them, they can be quite fierce.
Yes, and I do believe that.
Yes.
I really absolutely believe that. And you know, they're assigned there. That's their place. They're the guardians of that place, you know, or that territory. And it was quite interesting to kind of see that. And then also, you know, coming from Apache, you know, Apache Indian, having that blood running through your veins and walking upon the grounds, there were some interesting encounters to where individuals, when they found out about my lineage or my background, or you know, that sort of thing, that it just became very strange, because it was told to me that the Indians were not allowed into the location's home, and it wasn't their rule. It was just something that was passed to them by word of mouth, and I suppose their research, and allegedly. And so when I came upon the grounds, I ended up meeting one of the I can't say his name, one of the Indians who was there. And
that would do rituals.
Yeah, they would do things in the woods, still practice. And he was very kind to me. He was very kind, and we met by accident. Not sure. I believe
I doubt it was accident.
Yeah, it was designed. It was designed.
I don't believe it was accident.
Yeah, it was not accident. It was designed. Right. It was designed because we had did an investigation in the woods one evening, and that evening was it was really intense. And we sat there, and I went into a trance, unbeknownst to myself, before even knowing what a trance was. I sat there, and it just felt as if my spirit left my body, kind of thing, like astral projection, but it wasn't astral projection. And I saw and I heard these songs, and I heard women wailing, and I heard drums drumming, and I saw all these colors of purple and streams and water. And the following couple of days, when I said I met this person, he was sitting in one of the rooms, and I walked in, and we ran into each other, and he was like, "Oh, who are you?" And I said, "Well, who are you?" Because we had been staying, we were invited to stay in the home for 21 days. And so we were there, and we sat down, and we talked, and we had some really intense, deep conversations. And he himself went into a trance, and he began to write in the air with his finger, and he started describing the area, and he just started describing these beautiful Native American Indian images. And the funny thing was, as he was doing that, as he was just drawing in the wind with his finger, I could impressed upon my soul were the images, you know, coming through what he was drawing, and it was very surreal. And he tells me, I mean, there was literally tears in his eyes, and he said, "You may be the one. You're the one." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, "Well, you have your people have tread upon these grounds before." And at that time, of course, I was like, "Well, what do you mean? I don't, my family's never been here, you know, I've never been here." So I was just, you know, astounded by his words of wisdom. And then he proceeds to ask me to drum what I heard. And of course, I was embarrassed, and I was like, "Oh gosh, you know, I'm okay, you know, I can do it." And he wanted me to hum what I was hearing, and I did it. I just said, "All right, I'll do this." And so I started drumming on the side of one of the couches, and then I started humming what I heard, and then I shared with him the colors, and he told me, "Did you know that a river runs under this area and the streams and the creek. And I was just like, oh, I didn't know that, And he said, they're calling you, and he kept telling me you're the one, but I'm like, I need more information than that. What do you mean I'm the one? But it was a beautiful experience. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. It will never leave me. It will never leave me.
It was a beautiful experience because, when the importance of the ceremonies that took place and why that ground was sacred, and then for it to just be taken away and then so much chaos happen on the land, and then you see history repeating itself over and over and over again, like so many years, and then you see the energy and the thing is, we didn't expect to be those investigators that stay in one spot and you become where you're starting to just investigate and know this area so well that you know the ins and outs of it. And I think when we first stepped ground, we felt like we were connected, like we already knew this place.
Yeah, it was an immediate connection when again, going back to winning the contest and stepping on the grounds. It was like walking into a time bubble. And as soon as our feet hit the ground, it was like, okay, wait a minute, we've been here before. This is so familiar. The sight, the smell, the sounds, everything was familiar. And it was just a really, really interesting feeling. And we walked in, we got a tour of the home. I was overwhelmed with a sadness, a real deep sadness, and I couldn't explain it. And it was then we, of course, did the whole investigation and stuff and received a lot of these different kinds of voices. But again, the first night that we stayed there, what I find interesting is that the voice that came through, or the voice that I speak of, that deep guttural voice that is featured in the show that we were on, the words weren't very kind. It said, "I hate you." And I was like, okay, well, this is very strange. And the other EVPs, as we call them, were priest in a dress. And there was one that said, burn in hell, won't you?
Wow.
But I found those interesting considering the background that we came with. So I took it personal because there wasn't anyone there that I know of or knew at that time that had that background that we had. And wow. So I was like, okay, this thing, recognizes and knows who we are and has been expecting us and knows something, that it does not want us there. And that was the initial feeling, for at that time. And again, as we progressed and as we learned, and there was so much that started happening that it went from exciting to thrilling to wow, to okay, oh my gosh, what are we doing? What are we doing here? Why are we doing this? Things just started going chaotic in terms of the manifestations of this energy that was there. The dynamics changed between everyone. Things just started cycling into this bottomless, dark pit of just chaos. And anytime we left the home, it would lure us back in with the, how can I put it? There was just we would leave, but that we were just connected. It felt like we were stuck for some odd reason. I don't know if stuck is the right
now. How did you get away from this? What stopped this? What finally broke that connection with you guys, with whatever energy that was?
Well, what happened was, it was my personal encounter is what happened. One evening while investigating, I became extremely ill, and I felt something cold, like a hand with fingers of ice, just enter the right side of my body and shift near my heart. And that's when I heard a disembodied voice, and I was there with another team member, and that's when I heard a disembodied voice echo through the atmosphere's energy. And I again was in this deep trance, and when it happened, it said, "I'll hurt you." And then a few seconds later, it said, "I'll kill you." And both of which were manifested in my physical body in the days to come or weeks to come. And I had to have an emergency gallbladder removal that had some complications, according to the doctor's reports. They said my gallbladder was twisted and filled like a beanbag, causing the surgery to go on much longer than what it had to. And I had been to my doctors for a routine physical before that happening, as everyone does. And, the preventative healthcare scans that proved negative of any issues. My organs, everything were in tip-top shape. After the gallbladder, it was months later that I had a stroke. And
oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I never really talk about a lot. I hold that, to myself because I know when the time is right. And it was the foreshadowing of what's to come, pretty much for me. It was established that evening of that investigation, as we say in the writer's world. The "I'll hurt you" took place, which was the whole gallbladder incident. And the "I'll kill you" for me at that time was in the process. And that's when I had the stroke. And during that time, it was so terrifying that my life, just as a film projector, had been turned on. My life from 2009 till that point played, and I began to see all these apparitions, some hostile, some good, the spiritual battle that I spoke of earlier. That conflict, that inner conflict, that spiritual battle taking place within. I saw it during my stroke, and that was the scariest part, because I had no control over this. And so the combination of physical trauma and spiritual trauma wasn't aligned. But I still held on to knowing who the author and finisher of my faith was, and he prevailed. And I still had unfinished business, just why I'm here today. And when that happened, it became very clear that we were to cut the cord link, and we were to cut all ties and move forward, because I believed that we were getting too close. We were getting too close to a truth that it did not want to be exposed. And I mean, that's my opinion on it, because we kept getting closer and closer and closer. And when I say closer is when I began to validate a lot of the things that had happened, past, present, and future even. And it was too much. It was overwhelming. And the person or the spirit or what energy or entity or whatever it was coming. It was coming close to naming it. And I remember all of us having a conversation about that. And it was, it just even thinking about it just kind of brings me to that
it does bring the
scary place. It just, yeah.
Picture this. I mean, picture people going comfortably. You have a group. We weren't a paranormal group. We didn't call ourselves a paranormal team. We were not a paranormal team. We were all tour guides for this place, and we would always feel comfortable where we were at. And pretty much we were allowed to have the run of the house. We were allowed to all just sit there, be comfortable. It was like, this is your house, this is your place. And for a while it felt so comfortable, peaceful. But then all of a sudden, out of being there for so many years, all of a sudden there was a shift. Like, all of a sudden overnight, there was something that just kept on saying, we need to just stay away from this place. We need to stay away from this place. And then when that energy said to Victor, I'll hurt you and I'll kill you, let me tell you, the energy was so thick. Like they say, you could feel a knife could cut right through that energy. And for 5 of us to be there alone in a house that we were always comfortable, we all wanted to get up and get out of the house. None of us stayed the night there. And we were supposed to all spend the night there. And that night we were like no, we all need to leave.
Everyone left. Everyone scattered. It was truly, again, I don't believe there's a word that could describe it other than terrifying. And wow. I was horrified, by it, because for a time it was like it's like having, in a strange way, it's like having this close friend that is appearing to you, and you're talking with them, and they're interacting with you intelligently, and then all of a sudden they're just like something totally different from what they were. It's like the mask comes off. And again, there were so many details. When I look back and when I sum it all up and I put it together, it's just like, wow, I didn't catch that. I didn't catch this person and what they say. There were so many keywords. There were so many things. And so that's when after that had happened, we kept it very close, under wraps, because there was a lot of people trying to figure things out as to what happened. And we kept it to just a small circle of really, really close friends that knew us, that were involved in the paranormal field, and they kept an eye on me, and I love them for that, and I thank them for that. And they were there able to counsel me through and get me through. But yet still, when we left, it was hard. It was a difficult thing to do because we loved the people. We loved the people that we had connected with. But it was just one of those things that, again, you can't.
You had to do it. Yeah.
You have to do what you have to do. That's perfect.
Yeah, sometimes you have to close the door physically. Now, you've written a book about this, though. Now, you've taken all of this and you've tell us about your book, because we're running out of time here. So let's because this didn't just, the story didn't end there. The story ends with you actually took this entire experience and turned it into a novel.
Yes, I did. It's out now. It's called An Honest Evil. And what I did was just kind of took everything, all my feelings, all my emotions, a lot of the experiences that I personally had, and I put it in perspective, and I allowed my protagonist in the book to go through it. And that was therapeutic for me, and that was healing for me. And however, the way it was written, it's fiction in the guise of reality, I guess you would say. But there are a lot of things in there that truly did happen, and that was the best way I could articulate and express myself at the time. And it was writing An Honest Evil, and so that again, that brought a lot of healing to my life and to my soul, and put a lot of things in perspective. And so, yeah, that's how it was conceived, born, and put out there. I didn't want to write a memoir. I didn't want to put anything out there that it just wasn't time. But the character, again, the protagonist, Emmanuel, goes through a lot of the things that I went through. But I believe that he made better choices than what I did in real life.
Well, you got to change the story. So tell everybody how they get in touch with you if they want to buy a book. And of course, if you want to hear more of us talk about these things that go bump in the night, you can always check in with us on the Seance Room. And Seance Room will be airing when, guys?
We're going to be airing back on Saturday nights. I know that it's been a little bit because of the craziness of what's been going on, but I'm ready.
Corona.
Yes,
Corona.
the COVID-19,
Yes,
you know, the Corona.
Corona.
So that had to put a little stop because, you know, family's first, health is first.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. People had things to do, and I took a little break from
yes,
this and
I'm,
have to reboot because it's,
yes,
you know, people
definitely.
had to get their provisions and prepare for this. So this was important. I mean, we got a pandemic going on while we're speaking now. So
yeah.
we had to do this. So, but Saturday nights, what, 11 p.m.
11 p.m. Eastern time.
Eastern time.
And that's
and
10 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Yes, and
and
you
when
can.
when will we start launching that? That's going to start when, in May?
I am going to say in May because we're getting ready to do some pre-recorded, and you will be seeing us doing some Facebook Live, you know, and doing some pre-recorded videos so folks know that, hey, we're all still here. We haven't left y'all. It's just we're trying to get everything back in order. So I would say the first week of May, be ready for us because we're coming back.
Yes, and definitely
Yep.
people can reach me at victorsalazar.com, and you will see all my updated information on where and how you can get the book, and also be expecting the prequel to that book to be coming soon. So yeah.
All right, great. Thank you guys so much. It was really an honor to have you guys on this. It really was. I really can't tell you how wonderful it was to hear this story from you guys and have you share it with me.
Thank you for having us, Kalila.
And thank you for having us.
It's our honor and our definite pleasure.
Yes.
All right, well, we're going to say goodnight to everybody. Y'all have a scary evening and wait and watch for more Scariest Paranormal on Friday nights. Pleasant dreams.
Good night, everyone.